everyone. How are you? And welcome to A1R Psychic Radio and Moonstruck.tv. I am Dani Voriskova, and it's such a pleasure to be with you again this week. So, what are we doing? What are we doing today? Well, today I have another guest, and she is a college student, local college student, studying anatomy and physiology. She's also a psychic medium. So I really just had to bring her perspective, her experiences, and just a few words from the younger generations. So we are going to delve into some interesting stuff. We are going to connect signs, synchronicities, obviously psychic and mediumship, and we're going to touch upon the phenomenon of near death experience a little bit. So, supernatural living, here we are. And by the way, if you would like to know more, you can always reach out to me at newworldservices.org. And if you'd like to hear more about any of the guests that I bring or the show that we're doing here with the A1R Psychic Radio, just send us a message here. We love your feedback. So, on that note, here we are. Miss Satori, are you ready? Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And as I was just saying to our guests, it's a real honor to have your perspective. So, how are you today? I know this is
I'm
something
good.
different.
I'm good.
Yeah. So I would like to just mention that you are a college student and you're also a naturally gifted intuitive. I know you're not fond of the word psychic, but it's there. So with
Yeah.
all signs and synchronicities, you even when I invited you to join us this afternoon, you said, I'm not sure. And then you received a sign, a clear blown
I
sign.
did. Yeah.
And that was okay, I'll come. So we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, so where would you like to begin with this? I know that our one of our main goals is to bring light to mediumship, to our connections with the afterlife and the universe around us. So
Yeah.
yeah, now you have quite a bit of background here. So what would you like to start with?
Um, huh.
Sorry, see, good. Now there's a phenomenon that is being widely talked about and being shared with the highest institutions, the highest research centers all around the world. And that's called an
Yeah.
NDE experience. So this up until now was a hard phenomenon to explain. And we've finally reached the point where we have science backed research and evidence of a near death experience. So, not to waste all of our time here, but what is a NDE? I will just briefly mention. An NDE is when a person comes to the cusp of death or someone who's pronounced clinically dead. Someone who, yeah, I hate to say that word and be, but that there's really no other way to say it. So what
Well,
happened?
I would like to say that it doesn't have to necessarily be as uncomfortable as we as a society make it. And, it is a natural thing. And that does kind of bring me to, you know, what we, you know, wanted to talk about. The brain is, you know, na- naturally produces a chemical called DMT, which, you know, gives you this. I'm not necessarily sure how to explain it, but it gives you this experience. Um, and I think that opens when you come back from that, in the near death experience, when you come back from that, it gives you that sense, that a lot of people aren't necessarily able to explain when they have a near death experience. That's why a lot of people, they'll have a lot of emotions from it, but I think that that really opens up a lot of gifts for a lot of people, whether that be mediumship or, psychic abilities. It really opens up that, third eye. And for me, studying, anatomy and physiology, I've learned, that really in the pituitary gland, that there's a lot of things in the brain, um, chemically, that happen, especially with the NDE, um, that happen, and that can really be linked to, the near death experience.
This is so fascinating. I was not aware of the DMT connection, but we do know that science has proven that people do return with spiritual gifts or just supernatural gifts, whatever. It's not super, you're right, it's natural. But they also can return with different personalities, different perspectives. Some even return with new allergies they've never experienced before.
Yeah,
So, the- is it physiology? You're the college here, but the
yeah,
the changes in the body are significant. Some are not so noticeable and some are profound.
yeah. So, um, in my program, anatomy is obviously the study of the body. The physiology is, the study of how the body works. Those body parts and how they work. Um, so learning how, you know, different things coordinate with, you know, their given parts, and obviously having the spiritual factor of, the near death experience.
Mhm.
It does give an interesting perspective, um, and, obviously the added insight. Um, it is definitely challenging to navigate the world with that added insight. Um, I feel like having to, readjust to society is a little more difficult sometimes. I'm sure, you've dealt with that yourself. Um, but as, as we, grow and progress as, a community and as a society, um, I think we could definitely, build more, and be there for each other. I think this radio show is definitely, building towards that as well.
Definitely. And if I could just say to our listeners that Miss Satori is in her early 20s. And I'm noting that because I would just like to ask you, are you noticing a difference at this stage in your life now? Are you noticing the difference between conversations amongst peers and all that? I I'm not wording it right. Are you noticing that this is getting easier? That this is being more supportive as opposed to you've been intuitive younger, earlier on, and I know that the psychic conversations were very difficult, a little while back, but how is this with medical professionals? You did receive medical treatment for your experience. So between the professionals or peers, how is this conversation going? And is it going at all? Is there support or is there at least acceptance?
Well, I think that with, you know, times changing, I think that there are a lot of more younger people in medical offices. I think that they're starting to become a little more understanding, which, thankfully. I think, with my peers, the conversations are starting. A lot more people are becoming more curious. They're starting to notice, like, yeah, I dealt with this in my childhood. I've seen, supernatural things. I've seen paranormal things. I notice, mediumship around me and psychic abilities within me. Um, and they want to talk about it, but they're not sure necessarily where to go. They don't have the direction, they don't have the communities, and certain ones are building, within certain cities, but in smaller towns it might be hard, within uh certain areas, depending on where you are in the country, or different countries, or even within the states. It can be difficult, but I think social media does provide a very good um, community to my peers within my generation. Um, Even I've seen younger people, like very young, uh, developing curiosity. Even for smaller things like crystals and tarot.
And I love it. I didn't know about these things when I was younger. I mean, I was way in the country, so I didn't have access to any of this. So that is just music to my ears. Now, I mean, the whole point is to knock the stigma out of here and to bring these conversations to light. Not No judgment, nothing. And what I do know with science is now that we've come to the point that there's an afterlife, there's ESP, extrasensory perception, there's NDEs, there's all these different titles that intuition that are real. I know science is working on coming up with better questions and better
Right.
terminology, which we're struggling with words to the words to how do you describe this stuff, but yeah, so that we can have these conversations. And so it's a whole structure to normalize it is definitely a big deal. So I wanted to just touch upon something with the just wow factor with the NDE. So, yes, you have had one. And one of the things that you had shared was the fact of that you were awake, you were viewing. Not everyone does that, but you were awake, you were viewing the situation. Then you went through the transition. Well, you weren't awake, you were not alive, right?
Would you like me to
I don't want to
explain the situation
no,
for I am comfortable talking about it.
yeah, maybe not to get so far into it, but to say that you were, yes, while you were unconscious, while you were not alive, you were seeing your
I was
conscious.
above I was above my body.
Thank you. You were there and you
Yes.
were witnessing, although you were not here. So one small
Yeah.
thing to how do you put all that into this? One small thing that you had shared was in the end, after your hospital stay, after all that, you had looked at a little bit of the information and something stood out. Now, there was something about one of the multiple people that helped you out there. So I I would like to just share this phenomenon with our listeners that there was a name, there was a very special name to someone very close to you. Would you like to just say real quick, what is that? That's not our consciousness that
That would
creates that.
be
There's something other out there that's there's something else, right? Do you want to say that, or do you want me to?
go ahead.
Okay. Well, I don't know what time we have here, but you had an uncle that passed years before. So
Mhm.
I'm still like, what is this? So one of the major police officers who was there to resuscitate and bring your life back, his first name was the name of your uncle, and his last name was the name of your uncle's favorite band, one and only. So that's that's enough wow for today. And we've got so much more.
Yeah.
We got so much more to talk about. So, Miss Satori, thank you for bravely sharing your time, sharing your knowledge with us. And on that note, I'm going to let you go and we look forward to seeing, talking to you again.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Okay. So, let's see. when when we're talking about signs and synchronicities and this phenomenon, right, we'll continue to build a little bit on this. The absolute chances of this officer that I had just mentioned, who had come to Miss Satori, who was there beside her, who was there, there's more to it, but he was the one who orchestrated everything. So the chances, could you imagine not knowing this person, not having anything to do with this, how could this officer have such a random name that was just the first name of her closest uncle, the last name of his favorite one and only band? So when it was, oh, hey, who is here to help? Officer Angel so and so. I gotta say it. I have to say it because it's just too much. It's too much. So I know that she did thank him. She did get a chance to meet him, and that was obviously very emotional. So, what connection, coming back to this, what connection and what part does the universe play with all this? There's our consciousness, there's obviously afterlife connection, there's the biology. What about the information field, the universal information field? How is it that this one at this time is there? It's like a just the meeting of just so. The signs and the synchronicities of inviting her here today. And she says, she's doing her thing. And then she gets the most direct sign from heaven, one of the most direct ones that she has. And she called me back and said, okay, we're going to speak to your listeners and let's share unscripted. Let's share some real supernatural stories. So I do know, and I've mentioned it before, that aside from this, that we are at a heightened energetic time. We are at a evolved time in our consciousness, with our souls, everything, whether we like it, we don't like it, whatever's going on. It's a fact. So with all of this, the earth, the everything, the information field is interacting with us. And is that separate from the afterlife? Sometimes I think so, yeah. Sometimes I do. You have to let us know. Give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. But I think there's multiple things going on here. M- maybe they're connected, but I do believe that there's multiple things happening here to orchestrate just the right situation. And th- it's amazing. So, what can we do with this? Right? Coming back to what I was saying about intention, don't mind them. Coming back to what I was saying about our intentions, what I've been doing lately is I have been setting my intentions, setting them in a way where I know with all certainty that this is what I want, this is what's going on, and I just speak it right out. Now, I happen to be a certified evidential medium. I know that I work for the other side. Doesn't mean I get a free ticket. Doesn't mean that I get anything I want, but I figured let's give this whole theory a try. Why not, right? So I started setting intentions and I started also asking for clear signs. Now, that yes, this is something we do with mediumship here and there, but I started making this as a way of life. And for example, I said, okay, this and this, I have a question. Should I choose this A or this B? And I said, send me a blue bird. Send me a bright blue bird if you want me to, yes, go this route. And I said, well, there you go. That's a challenge because I don't see them every day. I rarely see them. So 2 days had passed and I said, I don't know. Maybe they're not listening. And I mean, I'll have to have a session and talk to the other side anyway. I said, but maybe this field that we're talking about, this information field, I'm not sure. I don't know what to think. Well, as soon as I started feeling that, this bluebird started popping up. A friend sent me a picture right away of the bluebird, and it was this project thing. And I said, okay, that's strange. It's not strange enough. Skeptic in me, right? Even though I know skeptic in certain parts. I said, but it's not strange enough. So maybe about the following day, I was sitting outside, quiet on the deck, and a huge bluebird comes, lands. I see it out of my peripheral, and then I turn my head, lands on the railing and looks at me. And I knew my heart stopped, my everything, my stomach tightened up, and I said, oh my God. Hello. Okay. And I was just overjoyed. I was so overjoyed. So when I went to explain this to my friend, I said, "Hey, this happened to me." And he says, "Oh my gosh, what are you talking about again?" I'm like, "No, it happened." So I said, "Look, for an example, I said, this is what we're going to do. Let's just put it out there, another yes or no question right in front of him, right?" I said, "Now, if the answer is yes," I said, "so help me. When I go get in my car," I said, "I want to see a deer come running right past it, like full speed ahead. Let's go." And he said, "What are you talking about? Not you like, what are you doing?" And I said, "No, really." Yeah, we have deer here, but I was like, no, I want to see one haul butt right past me. And I said, I don't know. I don't know. And I said, if not, then send a red cardinal like tomorrow, right? We walk out to the car, and I do have to tell you, I swear, we went out to the car, and it was, oh, my car needed to be fixed for a second. So it took an extra minute. We opened the hood of my car, and a deer, literally comes jetting across from another property, flying behind the car. And I started laughing so hard. He even started laughing. I said, see how low? Don't, we're not, no, we're not going to say well, did you really say that? Did you really mean it? I mean, like, it could be something. And at that point, I have to share with you, sometimes people are just set on not believing, whether it's a reading or it's a sign, synchronicity, no matter what, it could be right there. I mean, this was only a few feet away, and I had just said it like, I don't know, half an hour earlier. So sometimes people, whether we give them proof, we don't, or we see proof ourselves, it's not that it's not there, it's that we or them just are not not gonna not gonna not gonna believe it at that time. So anyway, yes, that did happen. And, so there's a little bit of supernatural living for you today. And I honestly, if I could just say to all of you, it's such a pleasure being here. And if I can leave you with a message, I would like to give you the message of give it a try, ask for a sign, ask for something specific, and see how it goes. Be open. Be open, have fun with it. And don't worry. Don't worry about, am I invoking something or anything? Ask for something simple. Ask for something nice. And play with it. Who knows? So, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's a pleasure, and see you next week. Be well.